Welcome to Fairycrafting, the art of fairy magic. This is an overview of part 1, Foundation. If you watched or listened already to the whole course overview, you are familiar at this point with what Fairycrafting, the art of fairy magic course is about. So I will not go over that part again. If you don't know what am I referring to, then please watch or listen to Fairycrafting, the art of fairy magic, 3-part course overview episode, and then come back to this one. It will make a lot more sense. In the aforementioned course overview, so the previous one, I said that I will give more details about each of the parts in separate episodes. So here is a succinct presentation for part 1. The name Foundations is self-explanatory. In order to properly build something, anything, whether it is about exploring a fairy-related spiritual path or anything else, foundation is the thing that we lay first, and it has to be solid in order to support a strong practice, steady growth, and progress that ultimately leads to what we want to achieve. This is exactly what part 1, Foundations, is supposed to offer. Whether you are drawn to this from pure curiosity or feel an inkling to enter spiritual partnerships with them, the fairies, this class is the place to begin. So join us to learn about the reality of fairies and about the gifts and dangers underlying encounters and relationships with them. Discover fairy, a world of wonder, but also be prepared to find out that fairies are not always cute, only occasionally benevolent, and sometimes quite dangerous. Learn from the lore of different traditions and from the presenter's personal experience about fairy gifts, powers, and the potential strings attached to partaking in these. Tackle the possibility of connecting with fairies in safe ways and invite their magic into your life. In this first class, part 1, you will get acquainted with different theories about the origin and identity of fairies as they are represented in different traditions. We will explore the meaning and origins of the word fairy, lowercase initial, and fairy, capitalized. Understand fairies in contemporaneity and how to relate your personal experience to the already existing and ever-growing body of lore. We're going to travel to fairy through shamanic journey. We'll get to understand the benefits of connecting with fairies and building relationships, and most importantly, the practical how to do this. We'll learn about fairy etiquette, the do's and don'ts, about fairy liminal time and portals. We'll journey to fairy space, meet fairy guides, and begin building a relationship with the first ally or allies that you'll have in fairy. Bottom line, you will learn how to work with a fairy guide. And last but not least, you will find out where you can take your practice from here. The class materials for part 1 are a workbook and the book. Your workbook, right here, Your workbook has illustrations, has um, exercises, lists of resources, and space for note taking. So you will keep everything in one place. Everything will be in just one binder. The book, yeah. So the book where fairies meet parallels between Romanian and Irish fairy lore is a comparative study, the first of its kind, and it aims to substantiate the body of evidence behind fairy occurrences by cross-cultural analysis. It invites deeper thought about the reality of such occurrences, particularly chapter 11 about protection, chapter 12, other forms of fairy-human interaction, and chapter 14, Irish fairy doctors and Romanian fairy seers, offer practical material to work with, which comes in handy not only upon completing the foundation level in fairy crafting, but even more so with part 3, working in partnership with fairies. There, in part 3, you will need all the resources and all the support you could get. And speaking of support, I shall remind that upon completing part 1, if you so desire, you will receive an invitation to join our close group, Whispers in the Twilight, the Fairy Clan. This is a safe space where we can all talk about fairy-related experiences and ask questions without fear of judgment or ridicule. This is also the place where I share from my personal practice and list plenty of resources. To take this part 1, to attend this part 1, no previous knowledge of fairies or folklore are necessary. The only prerequisite is your curiosity, your interest, your desire to learn about the subject. Fairycrafting part 1 is the prerequisite for part 2, which is build a fairy garden. When you will listen to the preview for part 2, you will understand that building a fairy garden is not a trivial act, nor a childish, whimsical act. And in the context of listening to the description of part 2, it becomes clear why everything that you learn in part 1 is not only relevant, it is absolutely necessary knowledge for participating successfully in part 2. Fairycrafting part 1 is also a prerequisite for part 3, working in partnership with fairies. You can take part 3 straight after completing part 1. So you're done with part 1, you can take part 3 directly. Makes perfect sense. Part 2 is not a prerequisite, and you can consider taking it later on, if at all. It is it stands on its own as a module, so it is not really a prerequisite for your part 3. Fairycrafting, the Art of Fairy Magic Part 1 Foundations, is available to attend in person and online. For scheduling and details about venue and costs, check Simina Yoga Facebook page and Whispers in the Twilight on Blogspot. The links are provided below. I'm looking forward to see you in Fairycrafting, the Art of Fairy Magic Part 1, Foundations. And until we meet, Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for your expressed interest in fairy crafting.